Hey, it's Chris Grove here. Today we're going to talk about Sideways from 2004. Sideways was directed by Alexander Payne. It stars Paul Giamatti as Miles, Thomas Hayden Church as Jack, Virginia Madsen as Maya, and Sandra Oh as Stephanie. This movie is about Miles, a 8th grade English teacher in San Diego. Also, he's trying to publish a book, and his best friend Jack is about to get married, and he decides to send him give him a nice send-off as he's the best man by taking him to the wine country for a week. And that would be the Santa Barbara wine country because they're both in San Diego and LA. So he's like, hey, I want to take you to the wine country and have you learn all about Pinot Noir, his favorite varietal, and just, have a week of wine tasting and golf and good food and just, a nice cultured time, basically. All Jack wants to do is get laid before his wedding. So that's the plot. So let's talk about it. What is this movie about? What is the essence of this film? It's about relationships. It's about flawed people. And it's about wine. More to the point, using wine as a metaphor to describe people and relationships in a way. That's pretty much it. So there's probably going to be some spoilers in this review. I don't know. There's a lot to talk about. So Miles is an interesting guy and one that I can kind of relate to. He's a writer. He's got some sort of artistic talent, creative talent. He's still getting over his divorce, which is 2 years old. I think we can all kind of relate to that to some degree. I had a relationship that's coming up on 2 years since we broke up, so we were together for 9 years, so I get that. We were gonna get married, but we weren't married, so 9 years is kind of like a marriage. He is sensitive. He's a little more self-loathing than I am. I actually think I'm a pretty good person. I don't usually have a freak out after every little setback, but I went through a phase where, that was kind of the case. He's got a bit of a drinking problem. Been there. But he only drinks wine. He only gets drunk off wine, which I find, if you're going to partake of something, a way to, kind of keep it dedicated to wine. I love his commitment to wine and mainly Pinot Noir. So that's his thing. All right, so that's Miles. Then you have Jack. Jack is a actor, kind of getting his career going. He does bit parts, commercials, and voiceover. He's about to marry a woman, an Armenian woman, from a very wealthy family. In fact, his father-in-law soon-to-be father-in-law, has offered him a job with his company in case his acting gig doesn't, pan out. And that's Jack. And apparently he's got a problem with fidelity because he just wants to get laid and party before his wedding. Because I think he looks at marriage as kind of like, well, that's going to be it. It's time to settle down. The ride's over. And I think he's a little commitment phobic and trying to figure all that out. I don't really relate to him as much. He's a little more shallow than Miles. But he's an interesting character and he's got his good points. and he has Miles back during certain portions of this movie. And you can tell that they really do care about one another, even though they're like the total odd couple. So they're off to wine country. And they make their first stop, well, actually at Miles' mom's on the way, where he excuses himself from dinner so he can go upstairs and steal some money out of her dresser that's like in an Ajax can, for the trip. Which, okay, we know he's a flawed character and he's not above stealing from his mother. But there's also kind of a weird vibe of, does she know about this? Is she like cool with him taking the money? Because she goes, do you need any money? He goes, I got it covered. Being like, yeah, I just went upstairs and helped myself. So kind of leaves you guessing, but I'm thinking she probably doesn't know that he knows where she keeps her stash. So anyway, that kind of gives you a little insight into Miles' flawed character. I don't steal from my mother, by the way, so I can't relate to that part of Miles. I've done some other things in my life, but I don't do that. Anyway, so once they're in wine country, they check in their hotel, which is now called the Sideways Inn. It's the Windmill in Buellton, the Windmill Inn. And there's a little lounge next to it that's now called the Sideways Lounge. So there you go. If you're ever in that area, just stop on by, I guess. So Miles and Jack end up going to dinner at a place called the Hitching Post, which is a real place. And Maya is a waitress there and ends up, knowing Jack from his previous trips up there. And you can tell that she's kind of interested in him a little bit, and she's beautiful. And Miles is, he's kind of balding and he's a little schlubby, but it's refreshing to see a very conventional woman, beautiful woman, kind of taking interest into a guy who's not the conventional leading man. Because she recognizes that, hey, he's a writer, he's sensitive, and, there are women that are into that. Thank God. And so, they end up just kind of talking a little bit. He's still getting over his divorce. So so Jack's kind of pushing him to, after dinner, they're like hanging out, having a drink at the bar, wine, of course, because no one drinks any other alcohol in this movie. So they're sharing a bottle of Pinot. And they do drink a lot in this movie. Like, I'm kind of amazed at certain scenes where they're able to function, let alone walk, after certain scenes, but they do. Anyway, they invite her over for a drink, and Jack gets the sense that, hey, she wants to party with us, man. Let's, go do something and go hang out later. Miles is like, let's go back to the hotel and just crash. I mean, I'm tired. Aren't you tired? He's like, oh, Jesus, man, and come on. Then the next morning, that's when he tells Miles, I am going to get laid on this trip, and you are not going to get in my way. So Miles is like, okay. So they end up meeting Sandra Oh's character, Stephanie. She's a sommelier at one of the wineries. Sommelier, for those of you not in the know, is basically the fancy term for wine pourer, but they're very knowledgeable about wine. They don't just pour wine. You can ask them any question about wine and they should be able to answer it. So, very knowledgeable. And she kind of pours them a full glass, whereas when you're doing a tasting, it's just kind of like a quarter of a glass, not even that. And Jack's like, you're a bad girl, Stephanie. And she's like, I know, I need to be spanked, right? So they're kind of flirting back and forth. He kind of hangs behind to arrange a double date with her and Miles and Maya, because Stephanie knows Maya, so they're like, hey, they want to go out with us. So So Jack and Miles, Stephanie, and Maya all have a double date, and it's a little interesting because Miles just found out that his ex is soon to be married, and she's gonna be at Jack's wedding. He invited her along with her fiance. So Miles has a little bit of a freak out about the whole situation. So he gets a little drunk and drunk dials her, and we've all been there, right? At least I have. Anyway, so he's pretty vulnerable during that part. And I love how Maya doesn't really judge him. You know, I mean, he's obviously tanked, he's obviously distraught, but she doesn't really judge him. They later go back to Stephanie's to smoke a little weed and have more wine, because I'm sure that's what Miles needs right now. Thank God he had a little water at the restaurant to, replenish. But that's what he's doing. So they off they go. Jack and Stephanie immediately go back to the bedroom, and you can hear them getting it on. So Miles and Maya end up going out to the patio and the foyer or whatever, and just, talk. And she asks Miles why he loves wine so much, and that's when he shares what he loves about Pinot so much, Pinot Noir especially. And that's when he shares his whole thing about the Pinot grape and how it really is, it needs a little bit of nurturing of sunlight and the cool air from the Pacific to really cultivate. It's a sensitive grape, just like he is. That's the message. And I think it's a brilliant message. I mean, I love that. It's awesome. So she wants to read his manuscript, that, his book that he's trying to get published. And, he gives her a copy, and they kind of share an awkward kiss, and off they go. And Miles is just self-loathing. He looks at himself in the mirror and just like, God, what did I do? Like, you schmuck, you can't close the deal here, blah, 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 blah. He's still torn. I think part of him still loves his ex-wife, but he's trying to move on. And that's what this whole movie's about. It's about trying to go forward, for me anyway. And it's hard sometimes. It's really hard. But we have to do it. Life moves on. I think you're still allowed to love your ex. I really do. And maintain that hope. But you also have to have a healthy dose of reality that life keeps going forward. And you need to go forward too. I think that's the whole message of the film. I don't know if I even want to spoil the rest. It's such a good film. And it also manages to be funny and quite hilarious in some scenes. The truth does come out about Jack. I'm not going to reveal how that happens. And Miles lets it slip to Maya. And that kind of paints a all hell breaks loose chaos scene. And then Jack goes further down the rabbit hole of his cheating, and until they all have to kind of come to some sort of a reckoning, I think. And it's all very true to life. It's not, none of this is forced or strained or anything like that. It just seems like this could really happen. Even some of the most absurd scenes, I could see happening. I buy it. There's one particularly weird scene at the end. Having trouble talking today, thank you very much. Particularly weird scene where they have to go back to a certain place where Miles was cheating to retrieve Jack's wallet. So I said Miles was cheating, where Jack was cheating to retrieve Jack's wallet. And it's a very interesting scene, a very funny scene, and a very tense scene all at once. And it's just brilliant. So I would definitely check this film out. It's worth a view or two. It's wonderful. It's poignant. It's about, like I said, it's about relationships. It's about moving on from relationships. It's about moving on to new relationships and forgiveness and redemption and all those good things. So check it out. From 2004, Sideways. This is Chris Grove. Catch you next time. Take care.